Hi everyone, I hope you guys are all well. I've had a really fabulous week off work. It's been wonderful catching up on lots of sleep and doing lots of reading. Uh, because, as you know, last week I did a video all to do with animation that, and I was said about how I was about um, 400 pages into Les Miserables, I think, at that point. And then actually later that day, because I just sat and I read throughout that day, I actually got it to 600, so I was at the halfway point. So all of this week I've just been reading as much as I possibly can, and I have finished Les Miserables. I finished it last night and I was absolutely bawling my eyes out, and so I waited until this morning to make this video because I kind of needed to process what I had just gotten through. And it was my first experience of reading Victor Hugo's work. I chose quite a chunky one of his books, didn't I, to first introduce me to his writing. And it's one of these books that he's been described as one of the books that people either never get through, or it's the book that they pretend that they've read. And given that I've realised last night that over the past 2 years I've gotten through War and Peace, Les Miserables and Anna Karenina, which are three books which I've always been sort of over there, but I've never thought about going there, and I've read all three of those in the past 2 years. I am so chuffed with myself for having read all of those books. So I was absolutely overjoyed when I finished this yesterday, not because it had been terrible, but because I managed to do that. I'd reached this kind of goal that I didn't know was a goal. It was just these books that were over there that I just never went near, and I am so happy that I have now. If I had to rank the three of them, War and Peace is still number one for me, because that book absolutely blew my mind. It was just, oh my god, sensational. Then it'd be Les Miserables, and then Anna Karenina. Now, just because I've ranked it that way, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with Les Miserables to make it second, and there's nothing wrong with Anna Karenina to make it third. It's just, if I'm forced to rank them first, second, third, that would be the order. But to be honest, they're so level with each other. It took me ages to come to that ranking, because they are so top notch. But anyway, enough about ranking and such. Let's actually talk about this book. So, Les Miserables is obviously set in France. It's kind of scattered around, but a lot of the action happens in Paris, and there's sort of about what. Yeah, probably about 10-15 years before the French Revolution and such, with the building of the barricades and all that lot, which happens. But in those kind of like 10-15 year build-up, we are introduced to Fantine, a woman who falls in love and is abandoned by her lover, and discovers that she's pregnant. We have Jean Valjean, who is a convict who has been let out on parole after 19 years in prison for stealing bread and for multiple attempts to escape prison. We have Javert, who is trying to. He's a prison officer, and he hates Jean Valjean, and he is determined that he's going to track him down, because Jean Valjean has broken his parole. He's left prison, but he's on parole and he's broken his parole. So Javert is out to find Jean Valjean, because this is the convict. He has to go back to prison, and he always has this thing that he has to complete every single task. And Jean Valjean is one of those tasks, so he has to track him down, he has to get him back to prison, etc. We also meet the Thénardiers, who are innkeepers and just generally the worst scum of the earth, who take in Fantine's child Cosette, and scam as much money out of Fantine as possible. And we also meet the bishop, who lives in Village of Dean, and he basically gives Jean Valjean his break, in a sense. He gives Valjean the purpose of carrying on. He brings God into Jean Valjean's life, and these two candlesticks, which then go on throughout the rest of the story. And so we follow these various characters throughout all of this time, through, you know, kind of the French Revolution sort of thing, with the barricades, and then a little bit afterwards. So this whole book spans, yeah, like 15 odd years in these various people's lives. So yeah, it's quite a chunky book. Now, when it comes to Hugo's writing, I really liked it. He's like Tolstoy. He likes to bring a lot of thought, a lot of philosophy into his writing, but he's also quite modern in the way of, he tells you, right, this is your location, you need to do him, her, go. He doesn't give you loads and loads of like descriptions of stuff that is absolutely of no need, apart from one point, which I will bring up in a minute. But one thing about Hugo's writing style, compared to Tolstoy or compared to other writers, is that he's not a linear writer. So what he does, so for example, the very, very first section is all to do with the Bishop of Digne. You learn all of his backstory, how he got there, the history of the candlesticks that come in, very important, obviously, for Jean Valjean's story going forward and everything. And then he meets the stranger, who is Jean Valjean, and you have all of the conversations that they have and everything, and the passing of the candlesticks over and such, and then parting of the ways. Then you go back in time again to learn all about Jean Valjean's past and everything, and how he became a convict and all the stuff that he went through, and then to where he meets the bishop and it moves on a little bit. Then you got all of Fantine's backstory, and so he keeps on going back, then forward, takes a step, back, then forward, takes a step. That can be rather frustrating for a reader, obviously, but it didn't frustrate me, because even though you're probably going, why do I need all of this information? It's actually really important to understand why the characters do what they do, especially later on. And he doesn't just do this with characters' lives, he also does it to do with the Battle of Waterloo, which is very important to Marius and his relationship with his father and his grandfather. But yeah, you think, well, I don't really need to be in the Battle of Waterloo at the moment, but you will when you get like several chapters down the line. So he's not doing it just to give you all of this information possible. He's doing it because you need it. So bear that in mind, that you're going to be doing a lot of back and forth, but you need to know it. Now, the one section that I will say that is a toughie, it's nearer the end of the book, and that's to do with the sewers. Now, if any of you guys have read this book, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a section, it's about 30, maybe 40 pages, where he talks about the history of the sewer system in Paris. Well, over in France in general, but it's particularly in Paris because that's where they are at that moment. And it's also due because Valjean is in the sewers with a person. I won't explain who that person is or why they're there, because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but he has to navigate through the sewers to get to freedom, to be safe, to get this person out alive. And he has absolutely no idea where he's going. He just clambered into the sewer with them to get away from all the shit show that's happening with the barricades and everything around them. They have to get to safety, and the only way is through the sewers. They don't know where they're going, where anything leads to, nothing. So Hugo tells us the history of the sewer system. And you can understand why, because as I said, he gives you information to know about it. But at the same time, because of the pressing situation, because of the barrage of the battle that's going on and everything, and then you're suddenly plonked into this dark water, sand, sludge, obviously, you know, muck and all that crap, quite literal crap, that they are swimming through and wading through. it just kind of feels like, do I really need to know this? You're going over about 30 to 40 pages to explain it's a maze when we can gather that already. So that's the only section that I'll say I found that quite tough to get through, because it's sort of talking about brickwork and the flow of the water and navigation and such, but I think you could very easily condense that down and just basically say it's a great big maze and Jean Valjean is in the middle of it with this person. They've got no light. They don't know where they're going. There, me personally, I think that section could be shortened, but it didn't. It didn't. And like annoy me to go, why the hell are you doing this now? No. It was just a bit of an, oh, okay, kind of an irk thing. But overall, it's a very soundly structured piece. I want to read a little bit from you, and as you can see, I have done what some readers don't like, of putting down corners and such of pages. I have possible places where I could read a bit from, but there was a bit right near the end that I read last night, which I absolutely loved, and it's rather important for kind of near the end, as it were, but not too important that this is a big plot giveaway or anything, but when you read it, you'll totally understand what it means. Let me put it that way. Okay, so this is at the point where the barricades are up, there's lots of fighting going on, and a key character, very sadly, has passed away. I won't say who it is, but it really does hit hard when it happens, just as certain characters' death in War and Peace, which I talked about in the War and Peace review, that it really hits you hard. So this is the chapter that follows straight after. I won't read all of the chapter, obviously, but it's immediately at that split second, something else is happening at a different location. Okay, so at that same moment, two little boys in the Luxembourg garden, for the eyes of the dramatist must be everywhere at once, were walking hand in hand. One was perhaps 7 years old, the other about 5. After being soaked by the downpour, they were keeping in a sunnier pass, the elder leading the way. They were ragged and pale, with the look of lost birds. The younger said, "I'm very hungry." The elder, who had developed a protective attitude, was holding his brother with his left hand while he clutched a stick to his right. The gardens were deserted, the gates having been closed as a precautionary measure in view of the uprising. The troops who had been encamped there during the night had left to go about their duties. How, then, had those two children got there? They might have slipped through the half-open door of a police post, or possibly have run away from a party of strolling players who had set up their booths nearby at the Barrière de l'Enfer, or the Esplanade de l'Observatoire. Sorry if I've probably butchered that, but there you go. Or perhaps they had escaped the notice of the park keepers at closing time the evening before, and spent the night in one of those sheltered corners where people sit and read their newspapers. In any event, they were wandering at large and seemed unattached. To be astray and free is to be lost, which is what these children were. They were the two little boys whom Gavroche had once sheltered, as the reader will remember, the Thénardier children, disposed of to La Magnon and attributed by the lady to Monsieur Gillenormand, and now become leaves fallen from their rootless branches, blown helter-skelter by the wind. Their clothes, which had been clean and neat in La Magnon's day, had served to justify her in the eye of Monsieur Gillenormand, were now in tatters. In short, they had become a statistic, recorded by the police under the heading Enfants abandonnés, and picked up by them in the streets of Paris. So whilst these students are fighting for the right to be able to feed themselves, feed the next generation, make sure the next generation is it is totally free to be able to do what they want to do, and being, you know, shot to death and ripped apart by the police. These two little boys have wandered into a park, starving, in rags, desperate for help, and no one is there to help them, and so they have become a statistic. And that was just really a powerful thing to read last night. He also does really quirky things. I absolutely love that Toussaint, who is Valjean and Cosette's servant at Rue Plumet, when the barricade stuff is all happening, she has a lisp, and he describes that in his initial description of her, and then in brackets he says something like, the writer will not dictate her speech in the musical fashion that it sounded, for we do not make fun of people's disabilities. Something like that. And it's like, whoa, Hugo, I like that. I like that you're doing that, because you're acknowledging that as a writer, I could, you know, make it sound like a lisp, and so I'm making fun of her, but I won't do that because I'm not here to make fun of her. She's a servant, she's a good servant, a bloody good servant for all the stuff that she has to deal with, and so I respect her for that, and good on you. He really does respect all of his different characters at different levels of society which get brought into this, and I especially found the backstories fascinating. Jean Valjean's one, they broke my heart, and Fantine is, oh my god, crazy. The bit that I read that just will not leave my mind, and hasn't left my mind since I first read it, was the part where he describes her, and she was 15 years old. She decided to come to Paris to seek her fortune. She's very beautiful. And he describes her as having a dowry of gold and pearls, the gold cascading from her head and the pearls shone within her mouth. And it's also tragic, the fact that due to certain circumstances, she's forced to sell her hair, to sell her teeth, to become a prostitute, and have this horrific ending that happens, and to see that dowry, that beauty, that dowry, the cascading gold and the pearls in her mouth get ripped away from her. It's, oh god, it's heartbreaking. So, would I read this again? Yes, I definitely would. Would I recommend it? Hell yes, I would. But be aware, obviously, like I said, he's not a linear writer, so expect we're going back and forth and back and forth. But the way, his passion, his humour, his love for these characters, you feel it on every page, and I'm not surprised it took him like 17 years to write this story, but my god, what an amazing story it truly is. I've loved every single minute of reading this. I really hope that if you haven't read this before, that you go out and get a copy and read it and enjoy it, because I certainly did. Now, when it comes to adaptations, obviously, as you know, I'm kind of obsessed with the musical. I have got multiple DVDs of it. I've got multiple recordings of it, which I absolutely love. Now, the musical does take stuff out from the book, just so that you know, and it does things just to make it, because more of from a theatre point of view, works better. So it isn't a straight adaptation, but it's a very good adaptation, as it were, and it's got some amazing numbers. So, musical numbers, so I recommend the various versions that there is. The film is, I will say one thing about the film, is that because of the way in which it's constructed, and obviously because you've got cuts and edits and all this lot, it does do that thing where it'll do a song and then the music will stop and then it'll come back again, it'll stop and go. Whereas obviously on stage it's very fluid. There's not one single word that's said. It's all sung, so it completely flows into each other. So it does lose that flow in the film version, but I still like the film version. There is, of course, the radio play version with Roger Allen, which I've got on my phone, which I absolutely love, and I will put a link to that in the description from Audible. Please listen to it, it's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, if you like EastEnders, obviously Roger Allen, but Patsy Palmer from EastEnders, who played Bianca, she plays Eponine in that drama as well, and I really like her depiction of Eponine. I think she's really great. But yes, please check out that if you're able to. It's brilliant. Or check out the recent BBC drama. Now, Andrew Davis, you know how I love him. You know how I love my period dramas, and he is one of my favourite writers for adapting novels for the BBC. I thought, you know, reading War and Peace, he did a phenomenal job with that. But this, oh my God, bless you, Andrew, for adapting this. Again, kind of like the musical, in that there are some bits that don't quite work for the script, or if he did actually put it into the drama, it would probably be twice as long or something, because there is so much that happens in the book. So there are things that are taken out, but he is very, very true to the book. He has like full conversations dictated from the book in this drama. The way in which it is filmed, the way in which it is acted, the fact that various cast members are producers on on this drama as well. I think it just goes to show how much passion and love was built into this drama. It is absolutely wonderful. So please check that out too. And as you know, the actual adverts, I think it was, for the BBC drama, it said about how love defies everything. As long as you have love, you have hope. That was it. And I think that's a true story, true message that comes through Les Miserables. And I have absolutely loved every single minute of reading it. And I'm really quite gutted that I've come to an end now. But you know, it's that time to move on. But I will definitely go back to Les Miserables in my life, just as I will go back to all the other stories that I have read in my life. And I loved it. And that's all I can think of to say. So, have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. You can leave me a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Entirely up to you, let you decide. And I'll be back shortly to announce which book I'm going to be reading next. It's been ages since I've done an announcement video. As last time I did announcements of 4 fiction books in one block, but I'm just going to do the one book announcer this time, and I am going back to non-fiction. So check out my next video to find out what I'm going to be reading next. Alright guys, bye!